Welcome to Extracurricular. I'm your co-host, Eddie Geller.
And I am your other co-host, Stephanie Vanos. I am a school board member for Orange County Public Schools, but here I am unofficially, like I am every day on the podcast.
We should do the podcast every day. That's a great point.
I don't know about that.
Steph, how you feeling right now?
I'm feeling great. We just came back from dinner at Francesco's.
Francesco's incredible. That was our first time there.
It was in Maitland. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I felt the need to say that.
No, that was great.
But it was great. And it was a recommendation of a neighbor who I adore. He and his wife love it. And so he recommended we go there. And I'm so glad we did.
It was fantastic. I got the eggplant parmesan and it was amazing. I felt like I ate maybe a quarter of it. And I am so full. Granted, there was like bread and salad and some white wine. People just want to hear about our dinner, right?
I mean, why not? I don't know what I had, but it involved pasta and some fresh eggplant and some other stuff.
It was delicious. If this is not making you hungry, I don't know what else we can do for you. Make yourself a plate of pasta, folks. Just, boil some water, make some al dente pasta, throw in some eggplant. Welcome to Extracurricular. If you have not listened before, this is actually not a food podcast. This is, in fact, a podcast about education, politics, media. Do we talk about anything else on this podcast?
Wait, should we talk more about food?
Maybe. I don't know. Let us know. Shoot us an email, podcastextracurricular@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram. Send us a DM, extracurricular_podcast. Also, while you're at it, if you're not already subscribed, subscribe to the podcast. And please do rate us. Steph, what can they rate us?
5 stars only.
5 stars only. I'm ready to give 5 stars to Francesco's because that was a fantastic meal.
Same. And our server was excellent as well.
He had a real charm to him. I used to do stand-up comedy in Gainesville, Florida, and there was a gentleman named Bob who did stand-up there. And he was a very avuncular, lovely man. And
Did you just say avuncular?
Yeah, avuncular.
I like that.
Thank you. And our waiter had both the same energy and appearance, like a tall, bald man. It was just a lovely human being. So shouts to Bob, the stand-up comedian from Gainesville. I think he's still going. And shouts to our waiter. I don't think we caught his name, but he was lovely. I mean, he did forget our forks, but then he brought forks eventually.
I think what the trick is with servers and waiters is like you have to care, but like not care too much. There's a balance.
Don't be too thirsty.
There's a line there. Exactly.
But we were not thirsty because our water was constantly topped off.
Thank you, Francesco.
Thank you, Francesco. Okay, let's talk about today's podcast. We have a very special guest today. Steph, you know our guest intimately. Do you want to talk about it?
I will. Our guest was my daughter, my eldest daughter. She is graduating this year from high school. She is turning 18 next week. She is headed to college in the fall. And she spent some time chatting with us. And it was just a really lovely conversation.
What's her name?
Elizabeth. Elizabeth Vanos is her name.
Perfect. I just want to make sure people, have that information because we don't hide the ball in this episode. It is Elizabeth Vanos. All your daughters incredibly smart. This is the first daughter we've had on the podcast, so I'm just going to talk about her for the moment. So wise beyond her years and such a beautiful heart and such a passionate young woman. How did you do it?
I am very lucky, I will say. I was just lucky to have a wonderful daughter and someone who's just so independent and I will say has grown so much over, especially I think the last 4 years. We talk a bit in the conversation about the impact of COVID on kids who are graduating this year, really spent a lot of their middle school years in COVID, online, just not being able to interact with people in the same way. And I feel like that has had a huge impact on them. And I think one of the positives is that at least she finds real strength and importance in having and building a strong community around her, which I appreciate.
It was beautiful. We also got her thoughts on, the pressures of school, about AI. It was a great conversation just around students and education. And I think you'll be delighted, just as we were, by Elizabeth as a human being. And granted, I am contractually obligated to say that, but I also mean it, that she is a wonderful human. And I think you'll really enjoy this conversation.
I agree. Well, I hope so.
Okay, so it was an interesting week for you on the board. I know there were some news articles about a vote, a couple votes that were taken. I want to just throw it to you and sort of tee this up because I know a lot of folks are talking about the 1 mil referendum here in 2026. If you could just explain to folks, because I know, like, there's a lot of folks here in Orlando who know what that is. Maybe you can explain what it is and what the vote was taken and why some folks were understandably up in arms and maybe what that was all about.
Well, that's a lot. I'll just start by saying this. So most of the funding for public schools, as people know, is really dictated by Tallahassee. And the funding sources come from some local property taxes and some state sales tax. But Tallahassee really kind of determines how much money we get. The money that we have more control over, our voters have approved a 1 mil referendum. And so I think it's $1 for every $1,000 value of your home property. The voters have voted for that every 4 years since 2012. It has really contributed greatly to our operating budget. It is now about 11% of our operating budget. It's about $260 million per year. And that pays for, really for us, just to back up a little bit, when this millage was passed, this was kind of after the during and after the Great Recession, where state funding dropped drastically. And the school district was forced to potentially cut positions, so teachers and educators and programs such as the arts and athletics, but passed this 1 mil in an effort to sort of maintain all of that programming and the people providing it. So every 4 years, the school board votes again to put this on the ballot, and then so that voters can then vote to renew this 1 mil additional property tax. It's really just maintaining it. It's nothing new. So we had a vote come up last week, and then it was continued to this week, and it was a vote for the mill, but there was some discussion about potentially changing the language on the ballot. And so sort of a confusing vote that came up, but this is what they need to know. There was some disagreement on the board about what the language on the ballot should be for the 1 mil. So that was sort of the split vote, but the entire board fully supports passing the 1 mil again, because it is, it's about 11% of our operating budget. So it's absolutely essential that this passes. Again, we are in this position because the state so drastically underfunds public education that without the support of Orange County voters, thank you, by the way, Orange County voters, there would just be huge cuts across the board. So yeah, that's sort of what's happening with the millage. Did I answer all the questions?
Almost. You were close. Doing a great job. And I know you're here unofficially, so it's an extra challenge to, try and interpret what official school board member Vanos does from the unofficial position. But let me ask you this. Talk to me about this language change that was voted on and the split vote. And folks might be like, this might be a little in the weeds, but I think this is, people are like, articles have been written about this and people are talking about this. So I want to talk about it, and I have you on the podcast. Amazing that we were able to get you on and booked you. So yeah, can you talk about what this split vote was and what this language difference was?
Yeah, so the current language on the ballot for the referendum states that the additional mill voted funds are used for educator, and so I think it's teacher and staff compensation, and then funding for the arts and athletics, and so that really funds positions and programs. I think the language is something to that degree. And so one of the pieces that has come up in the last 2 meetings was, can we include the word increasing teacher compensation in there? So it's actually the word increasing or improving. So in this last meeting last Tuesday, one of the members brought up that suggestion. And we were having a conversation about what should be included in the language. When I kind of heard everybody's opinions and everybody's takes, I thought in my mind, I do think the language needs to be changed, if anything, to just better reflect what we are actually spending the 1 mil on, to just be more transparent to voters, and to make sure that we are prioritizing, teacher pay wherever we can, of course. And so that was the conversation. What ultimately happened is there were some voters my goodness, there were some members in the queue to speak, but the vote was called, which is, it can be called under Robert's Rules of Orders. Anyone can call a vote on the motion. Yeah. So it was called before everyone fully had a chance to give their opinions and continue this discussion. And so the vote itself was on the language that would maintain it as is without including, either increasing or improving. That was one member's opinions. I had some ideas as well that were really never fully discussed because, again, I was in queue before the vote was called. And so the vote was taken. And so there were 3 members that did not agree that the current language should be maintained. However, I want to be very clear that, I know that every member does support the mill, as does the district. It's absolutely essential. So that was really what I think the disagreement was about.
Yeah.
And, I would just encourage people to look at the actions and the behaviors that all their school board members have taken over time, because they, many of them have fully supported teachers and fully supported our schools. And we were in a disagreement over language, but but we all support the 1 mill because we all know that is important for our teachers' compensation.
I know you and I have talked off mic and actually that the coverage on this has been pretty good, and folks can check out the Orlando Sentinel. And I just want to close this out because I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably curious, like, wait, how did Steph vote and what did she vote for? Can you just explain your vote?
Yeah, I voted against maintaining the current language that we are using for the millage. I think, whether we use the word increasing teacher compensation, whether we use the words recruiting and retaining highly qualified teachers, I think we just need to be very, very clear about exactly what the millage funds are used for. So and I voted against it because we did not fully finish the conversation, and I was not ready to vote on the issue.
I appreciate it. Well, I'm always here to keep you honest on the podcast and in real life. So thank you.
Thank you for the question.
You're so mad. Okay, let's kind of close out with something a little more uplifting and lovely, which is you've had the opportunity to speak at a number of graduations this last week. That's part of the fun part of May. I know May is a crunch for you. Can you just maybe speak to a little bit about what that's been like and maybe kind of what you've been talking about in your graduation?
Yeah, so I will. May has been a month. There has been a lot going on in District 6. I have received so many emails, so many phone calls, so many meetings just about, just different issues, reappointments and the millage and health insurance and just so many different things. So it has been an extremely busy month. But yes, the best part about it, number 1, is delivering those teacher impact letters, which was a couple of weeks ago, and then also graduations and really just like seeing students. This is what it's about, right? They finished high school, they've completed their K-12 education, and they're moving on to exciting things, whether that's college, whether that's community college, whether that's workforce, whether that's some other type of training. It's just really exciting to see. And the students are so, so excited crossing the stage. Like that's so fun too. I really, really enjoyed that. So I have had an opportunity to attend Edgewater High School. Their graduation was last week, as well as our alternative's tricky word, alternative education, and then Acceleration West. So I have, next week I have Winter Park and I have Evans, and then I have my daughter's graduation as well.
So what have you kind of been talking about in your speech?
Oh, so my speech, so I have the opportunity to make some graduation remarks, and I've just really been talking about, I actually quote my daughter, Elizabeth, something that she mentions actually in this interview. And she just talks about
how that works.
I know. It just talks about how, she's really interested in, I don't know how she said it, failing at some things in the next couple of years and becoming mediocre at quite a few hobbies. And so really just playing on that and just the importance of just trying new things and not letting, in a world, I think, where we're so pushed to embrace perfection and efficiency, particularly through AI, that really perfection and efficiency are 2 of the least interesting things about a person. and just to remember that, right? And to, that trying new things, even if you're not going to be good at them, and learning things just for the sake of learning, like that's good.
That's beautiful.
And just to sort of build that unexpected range of skills and understanding, and there's value in that. and that of course you want to pursue excellence in your line of work, and I get that, but that you should also continue to cultivate interests around that, and just always be learning. And I kind of end it with one of my favorite quotes that you have said to me before, which is, I hope that you can all be caught trying. And sometimes, I think sometimes people don't like to be seen trying, because if people see you trying, then they know that you might not succeed.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And like, trying in and of itself is something valuable. And I hope something that we all continue to do all the time, even if you don't know, if you're going to win or if you're going to be good at it. Like, trying is cool, and we should just try. And, again, like I said, in a society where like we're kind of relying on AI to do all the trying for us, like let's not do that. Let's try as human beings, and then let's share that insight with other human beings. So that's kind of what I talked about.
Oh, that's really beautiful. And you decided not to talk about how great AI is for the workforce, and decided you did not want to be booed.
Well, it was funny because the Edgewater graduation was at UCF. And so I was thinking about that UCF graduation where I think the speaker mentioned something about AI and the Industrial Revolution, which also comes up in the interview. And so it did actually kind of strike me when I was having that speech at UCF.
Do you feel like you catch me trying in this relationship?
All the time. You're amazing.
And failing?
No, not feeling. I think there's like, I don't know, there's just something about that. Just seeing people try, like seeing people sweat, seeing people like not sure if they can accomplish it, seeing people willing to put themselves out there, not knowing the result. I just think there's something incredibly compelling about that.
That is beautiful. Well, on that note, let's go to someone who tried and succeeded at being interviewed by us and did a wonderful job. Here's our interview with Stephanie's eldest daughter, Elizabeth.
Today we have my very favorite guest on the podcast, and I can say that and truly mean it because my daughter, Elizabeth Vanos, is on the podcast today.
That's who I am.
Welcome to Extracurricular, Elizabeth.
Why, thank you. I feel very welcomed. I have a glass of water so I don't make mouth noises, and my phone is on silent on the ground. So yeah, I can say I've been sufficiently welcomed to the podcasting room.
To be clear, you're welcome to make mouth noises if they are in the form of words and sentences. Those mouth noises are no.
I think this is just another device to silence women. This is because of Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is a long-awaited interview. I feel like, Steph, you and I have talked about having Elizabeth on, and you're tough to schedule. You've got things to do.
I have a lot of self-imposed conflicts. That's for sure.
Well, we're delighted to have you. Steph, what do you want to know about your daughter?
Oh, there's so many things. I mean, I don't even, well, so here's kind of where I want to start. So you are turning 18.
Big 1-8.
Big
in
1-8.
just over a week.
Yes, I am.
Which is unbelievable and incredible. So I'm just going to start off with a basic question. You're about to become a, quote, adult. How does it feel to be an adult in this world right now?
Well, one tries not to get discouraged, and one sometimes does a pretty good job, because I think I am a person that does not really see a lot of point in wallowing. I feel like I hear a lot of bad things, and I feel like it is undeniable that there are a lot of bad things about coming into adulthood in this day and age. And not to disparage the weight or the depth of any of that, but I think I do a really, really, really good job of trying to figure myself out first and find the joy in my everyday life and understand who I am as a person fully. And I think that brings me, as I'm transitioning into adulthood, and I think that brings me some peace. And I think what I just said was a bunch of waffles, but you get it.
I think that's incredible. And I think there's a lot to that. So that's encouragement. Kind of focus on what you can do for yourself and figure out who you are, and then kind of navigate. And then it sounds like you feel like you can kind of navigate the world out there. Yeah.
I mean, I think that like these weird transitional periods just get a lot easier if you know, if you can find a constant throughout that. And I think my constant is that I have a really supportive group of people around me, like you, occasionally my sisters, generally I think I have a pretty good network of people around me, and I think I have a good network of people I know. I think I know myself really well, and I think that finding those constants and those things that I can rely on is really helpful in navigating a strange transitional period.
You know, sorry, Steph. You're Elizabeth. You are so self-aware and so thoughtful. Do you ever think that it feels, and it is not, it's a wonderful thing, but does it ever feel like a curse? Does it ever feel like, oh, you have peers who are going around more bliss? Because this is kind of how I felt. Like peers who went around going on more blissfully in their existence. And you're like, there's a lot going on, folks.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I sound like the crazy one sometimes in school because I will bring up something that recently happened in the news or that is just going on. And to me, it just seems like a fact that everyone would be aware of, like, what feels like monumental things or events in the crumbling of our democracy, to put it lightly and funly and casually. And so sometimes it feels like I'm going in there and I'm like with my tinfoil hat on and I'm like, did you hear about this thing and how this is going to be a really big deal and all this stuff? And it is absolutely a big deal. But I have people just being like, what?
Well, there was a conversation I know you had earlier this year about, I think it was centered around some of the ICE activity in Minnesota, and you were having a debate with another peer. And can you share a little bit about that story?
That was something. So I was sitting in my biology class as I often do. I no longer often do. I am out of here. I am free as of the 14th. I was sitting in my biology class as I used to often do, and there is a peer in that class who was partially responsible for the starting of the Turning Point USA chapter at good old-fashioned Boone High School. I think you can attest to this. I think I used to be quite a good deal more of a firebrand than I am now. I think I used to be a lot more of a person that would jump at any sort of baiting. I think I've gotten a little bit better at that. I am never just going to be one that's like, okay, we'll just like let people get away with harming other people. I think there's a line that you have to draw when it comes to how you're going to respond to people and how you're going to respond to rhetoric that is inherently inflammatory and that is used in an inflammatory way. So I was like, okay, you know what? I know who this person is. Everyone in this class knows who this person is. They're going to say what they're going to say, and it's not good, and I don't endorse what they're going to say. I don't like any of it. And I feel like at some point you have to say something, but I think this whole class has gotten so used to this routine throughout the entire year that we know who this guy is. And we know that this guy is not like the standing picture of empathy and compassion. And that is what it is. But he starts talking and then he keeps talking and he keeps talking. And finally my friend responds and I'm like, you know what, actually, he kept talking. Maybe he did have it coming a little bit. So we sit down, we're talking to this guy. He's talking about how, if people just follow the law and everyone is upstanding and morally right and just comply with whatever you're being demanded to do, then that means that you have done all the right things and you are a certified good person TM, and that means that you do not deserve to die at the hands of law enforcement, which I think is... I think what I think about that. I think we all share the same view on that. And so I'm talking to this guy and I'm like just pointing out that like you can have whatever political beliefs you want, but you're claiming to be a patriot and then you are taking 2 government classes that are standardized by College Board. They are AP government classes. He is taking U.S. government, he's taking comparative government. And you don't know anything about the Constitution. You don't know anything about the Bill of Rights. You don't understand anything about the fundamental laws of this land or the way that it works. And that to me is an incredible arrogance to go into a debate by making purposefully inflammatory statements and then waiting for someone to respond to you so you can have a debate, by starting the Turning Point USA Club. All of these things he's doing are to invite political discussion. So you are choosing to go in there to invite political discussion and then go into that political discussion without any sort of regard for or knowledge of these fundamental principles that underscore our democracy, not even underscore, that are the foundation for our democracy. So I'm going in, I'm telling him about this. We're talking about ICE, so current events at the time, I think like the last week had been the shooting of Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis. So I bring that up as like, hey, this does not exist in a vacuum. These things do have consequences. All of these individual actions cannot be brushed off as, oh, just these people were bad, this thing was bad, it's not going to amount to anything, it's the law, it's all of this stuff, it's just. And so I bring it up and he goes, who's that?
Oh my God.
What's that? I'm like, well, again, we're entering this space. Everyone is so determined to have an opinion on something. And, I'm an opinionated person. I respect a lot of things about that. But I also think there are some times where it is okay for you to not have an opinion about something if you don't have the knowledge base or the contextual understanding to back that opinion up. And he clearly doesn't. He doesn't know about this event. He doesn't understand. This is a very long response. But sometimes I just find it insane, the arrogance with which people are willing to proceed into a discussion about politics or about current events, and you're going to proceed into that discussion and you're going to talk about your values and your morals and why this thing is fundamentally bad or this thing is fundamentally good or why this is wrong or this is right. And you're going to go in there and you are going to have an opinion on it. You are going to try to convince people of that opinion. You are going to spread all of this stuff, and you're not going to understand any of the political or historical context that goes into having that opinion or that goes into having that discussion. So it's like, if you are not willing to approach a conversation with all of the nuance required to handle that conversation, why are you the one starting it? And then when I bring that point up, he says, I'm sorry, I just don't know a lot about this stuff. Buddy, I don't think you should have tried to start the club if you didn't know a lot about this stuff.
Well, it's interesting. I wonder if he has, if there are people, I would say people that we all know very well that are modeling this kind of behavior for him. And when, people on the news and people in the government model this exact same behavior, it emboldens people in our country to act the same way.
I think this kind of I think this plays into the COVID of it all, where it's like during COVID, we're told don't trust the experts. You can do your own research. You have the power to go out and know X, Y, and Z about X, Y, and Z. Everyone has the power to be an expert all of a sudden. We have the internet. We have all of these people spreading bold misinformation about vaccines, about COVID, all of this stuff. And we get this fundamental distrust of institutions because COVID was new. And so when we're going to talk about and learn about COVID, the experts are at first coming out with advice that feels contradictory, that feels conflicting. And so you hear all this stuff and you're like, wow, this isn't adding up. This is a really scary time. All of this is new and scary and I don't understand it, and all these people are giving me what feels like really conflicting advice, and so I'm gonna do my own research. I am an American and I am equipped with the tools and the power and the freedom to go and do my own research. And so meanwhile, the people that are in authority are telling you to question experts. And so with all of this surrounding, people do not understand that you are not the expert on everything all of the time, and sometimes actually your opinion does not matter as much as someone that has a greater knowledge of this field than you. And I feel like, again, I was pretty young when COVID happened. I think I was 12. But I feel like there did used to be a time where people were a little bit more aware of the fact that there are some conversations that you can take a step back on if you don't know. You are not an expert on everything. Not every argument is going to have the same validity, no matter how much research you think you have or emboldened opinions you think you have or any of this stuff. So I think the COVID of all of it is interesting to look at.
I think that's a really important point, and I feel like I forget, as much as this country has forgotten about the wild impact COVID had on all of us and how we are still both suffering from its consequences and have not really faced it in any sort of substantive way. There's a million splinter directions we could go after that, sharing that story. But one thing it does make me think of, and thank you in advance, because this is somewhat of a anthropological dig into what it is like to be in high school, which your mother and I are just a bit removed from. But one thing it did make me think of is, and I both don't like this discussion, but I do think it is worth some examination, is what's going on with boys. And so I'm curious, your story makes me think there is so much discourse in the media about the incel culture and looks maxing, etc. Every keyword I can think of that comes to my mind. Do you feel like you see an influence of the toxic bro, like incel culture in your world, which caveat is like you're
Very progressive world.
You're so maybe you don't see it as much, but I'm curious if you feel like, oh my God, they just saw this on a TikTok and now they're spouting this.
What's interesting to me is that, and I think this is mostly just because, again, I live and exist in very progressive circles, but I think what most people in my vicinity have learned to understand, like, what the manosphere is. Like, I think it in and of itself has become a little bit of like a meme in more progressive circles.
Yeah.
So I feel like most people are like very aware of what classically like the incel right-wing red pill pipeline is. But I think that despite knowing what it looks like in its most overt form, people, because now we have like this image, right? This idea of what red pill and misogyny looks like. So we have created a new image of what it looks like. So I feel like not a lot of people that I know personally have fallen down the red pill pipeline. But what we have fallen down are more just like, I guess this is the red pill pipeline in a way. The more insidious, just kind of like, I know what like misogyny looks like. So that way when I see like this slight misogyny in spaces, or when I see it in a more subtle way, it's fine for me to like joke about that, or it's fine for me to like engage in it in these little subtle ways, because I know what the big bad red pill threat looks like. We have knowledge of that. We have visibility of that. But because we think we're able to separate like the idea of the big bad manosphere from just like, oh, it's just edgy, or like, oh, it's just X or Y or Z or the other thing. It's like, are we still able to remove that influence of misogyny? No. But do we know enough to shy away from like the big institution that is red pill? Yeah, because like that's not socially acceptable really anymore. So it's interesting. I also think what's interesting is that bioessentialism, or like just the idea of there being like a divine feminine or like a divine masculine, is kind of like the like hippy dippy like woker rebrand of a lot of traditionally like red pill stuff. The idea of like the infantilization of women, or like, I'm just a girl, or like, I just want to like behave at the blue store so like we can get like a treat when we're at the pink store. And it's like, you understand what you think red pill and misogyny and all of this stuff is supposed to look like. So when you see it in another form, you think like, oh, it's okay for me to engage with this because it's not, again, the big bad scary monster of red pill that we've now kind of learned to recognize.
Well, and I think too, some of the worst offenders of, I mean, this is no surprise to anyone, of misogyny and a male-dominated culture exist in progressive circles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And men who can use the cover of being, I'm a feminist, I'm progressive, but in their interpersonal life want to dominate over women or their partners or whatever. And so all of that rings very true.
Are you guys aware of the internet term FOID?
No. Educate us.
So FOID means female humanoid. And so that's where that comes from. So I have a lot of friends that are like FOID. It's like a kind of self-deprecating thing of being like, are you guys familiar with like the Weezer kind of performative, like, oh God, I'm such like a loser. Yeah, it's like kind of incel, but it's also kind of like, it's a little more like self-aware, self-deprecating, but it's kind of like that where you're like, just like a female dirtbag loser, but in kind of like so it's like kind of used in like a little more like quirky way. I don't know if that's exactly the right way to say it, but I feel like I have like a lot of female friends will be like, oh, I'm such a FOID, or like refer to each other as like FOID, which is like, it's its own thing. But I do know of some guys that are not quite in my circle, but in like the surrounding vicinity, who will call another girl, or like girls in their circle, FOID, in the same way that like you would say, pardon my language, but bitch. And so it's like you kind of, you kind of are like, oh, I'm like so progressive. I wouldn't say that to a woman. Like I wouldn't do X or Y or Z with the other thing. But when you say it with the same intensity and with the same intention as when you would say bitch, like, is it really that different?
Mm-hmm.
Is it really, because like think about it, you're like female humanoid. It's like, you know, so it's, you have to kind of examine why you're saying the words that you're saying and like think about what they actually mean. But then like you'll say something about it and you'll be like, oh, it's just internet stuff. Like, oh, it's just slang. I'm progressive. Like, and this guy is progressive. I know this guy. And so it's like, and I feel like a lot of people would be like, that's a silly thing to complain about. And you know, maybe it is, but it's also like, how do these things start as if not as a smaller collection of more insidious things that are not that deep. And so 100%. I'm like, you know, we have to, that's just one example I can think of, but it's like, we have to be more conscious. If you're really going to be progressive and you're really going to be an ally to people and to women, it's like, you have to be a little bit more intentional about the language you're using, where it comes from and why you're using it and with what intention. What's your goal in saying that word?
Right. Well, and this has made me think of, and I want to call myself out from like the days when I started doing comedy. Like, not that I was ever some awful person. I mean, hopefully that was never the case. Still not the case. But, you know, I think making the joke that women aren't funny, like around comedy circles, could be like something you throw around and you do it with other women improvisers or comedians. And like in some way that was like kind of funny to like make fun. Like we were ironically making a joke.
Yeah.
But like I don't find those jokes funny anymore. I mean, there's plenty of other terrible jokes I do still find very funny, but that is like, that's what made me think of like, we can kind of joke about this misogynistic trope, and so we meaning men can get away with it. But to your point about FOID, it's like, well, where are you coming from with that? Because you're still playing off this trope and kind of trying to get some humor out of it or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I thank you for informing us.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like the FOID epidemic, but I would say it's like when I'm looking at, again, I do exist in more progressive circles. Even when I look at the guys that do exist in my progressive circles, it's like, let's take some time to unpack that. But then when you do want to unpack that, it's not that deep. And I'm like, well, I'm a firm believer that everything is that deep if you've got eyes to look at it. So.
Well, nobody likes self-examination. It's not fun to think of yourself as a good person or progressive, and then someone actually is like, actually, you're still kind of engaging in misogynistic red pill tropes, and then you have to re-examine. You, in theory, have to re-examine who you are in these things that you thought weren't a big deal, and actually, like, maybe that is something you should think about how you're doing. Okay, Steph. You've been silent. Speaking of silencing women, I feel terrible because I'm part of this podcast. What you've heard our, discussion diatribe. What are you thinking?
No, I appreciate the education and really in the way you look at it, like how I'm just taking it all in. I'm taking it all in. Let's move on, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I want to hear about your experience. We're going to bring it back to education a little bit.
Please, this is the podcast.
Curious about just your experience in school. If you can, just kind of share like what's going on. I would love to know. Okay, so specifically like let's start off with what has been your favorite thing about high school. What's been the best thing about high school?
I'd say best thing about high school is, I don't even know if this is high school or just the fact that I am now old enough to like have that autonomy, but just the ability and opportunity to create community. I think that's been a really big one. Mm-hmm. I think I have built myself a really, really solid village and network of people and of friends over the past 4 years. And I don't know if it was high school itself or it was just that I finally got old enough to where I had a little bit more autonomy in how I developed friendships. But I mean, I love my people. Yeah. So I definitely say it's that.
Well, and I think, your class was basically sixth, seventh. I know. 6th, 7th, maybe
That's
part of 8th
edited
grade.
out.
6th, 7th grade during COVID. And so really a big chunk of your middle school years were impacted by sort of this huge thing where you weren't in school and you were sort of alone. Plus it was middle school generally. So you all have been through a lot and really important other transitional years.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably why community building was such a big priority in high school, because that was kind of a little out the window in middle school. both just because middle school's a hard time for everyone, but also because COVID. I was online the entirety of 7th grade, and of course the last quarter of sixth grade. So, yeah, I think that's part of why I value it so much now. It's just because I didn't have that opportunity earlier, just because of
the world, yeah,
how everything was coming down in like a dumpster fire.
Good thing it's improved. So now I'm going to ask what are a couple of things from your school experience that you wish were different? Maybe like your top 3.
I wish were different,
or that you would change if you had the power to change this. I mean, even change the system. Even like, what would you change?
I would probably say I feel like a lot of my friends felt the pressure to be in really high level classes, and I don't think they want to be in high level. I think there's just such an intense drive all throughout high school is to rack up numbers and to achieve in a way that is immediately quantifiable. And I feel like everything, especially if you are like a gifted kid or like a smart kid, everything in high school is approached with such intention of what's going to look good or what's going to sound good or what's going to boost this number or this thing or look the best on my transcript and all of this stuff. And honestly, I feel like you especially did a really good job of not letting me fall into that tunnel vision. But I also think I am just not driven enough to fall into that tunnel vision. And I think that's kind of a good thing. But I feel like the culture of, especially my, probably near end of sophomore to beginning of senior year, it was just such a big focus on what a numbers game school is. And I feel like passion was just so far removed from that. And I don't know if this is just ADHD or what this is, but I just don't understand how you can remove passion from anything. And so like, I know a lot of kids that are like, well, I don't want to be in orchestra, but I'm going to be in orchestra anyway because all 4 years looks good for college. Or I know the flip side of people who are like, well, I want to be in orchestra for all 4 years, but it's not an AP class, so it's going to sink my GPA. And it's like, okay, well, if both sides of it are bad, why don't you just pick the one that is actively you have the passion for? And I feel like and I feel like just the culture of it gets so intense where I'm like, I am in these 7 clubs and I'm in leadership for all of them and I actually don't care about any of them, but I want them to be on my record for high school. And it's like, I know so many people that don't care about any of the things that they're involved in. They don't care about any of the classes that they're taking on a personal level. It's just numbers. It's just, what can I put on my list, on my Common App? What are my 10 activities? I need to show that I was engaged in all of them. And I feel like I was involved throughout high school, but I think it was driven primarily through passion and less through this is going to look good or this is going to count towards volunteer hours. And I just feel like being in that culture of all of these people who feel like you have to do all of these things in order to go to a certain school. Like, I'm not trying to devalue any of the work that people are doing because I personally, I feel like I've never been good at that. And so I totally appreciate that. But I also feel like there is such a push to be in the highest level classes and not have any empty spots and not do X, Y, or Z, or is this going to look good on my transcript or not? And it's like, you don't have to take AP Calculus if you don't want to. You do not have to be the secretary of like the environmental club and the beta club and the key club if you don't care about it. It's like, I just feel like there is such like a hustle culture in high school that I feel like it's just reflective of like a larger tendency of the American workforce, especially older people, which is to how much can I produce? How much result can I get for effort that I put in? And it's like, well, is the result the thing that matters? Or is it that you are like, is this satisfying to you because someone says that this is like a good and desirable trait? Or is this satisfying to you because you find personal fulfillment out of it? And I feel like a lot of the time they get conflated. And I just think that culture or that tendency is really damaging. Sorry, I know I've been monologuing a lot. I just have a tendency to do that.
This is a podcast. We love it when people yap. Yeah, as usual, so insightful because before you got to the part where you're talking about the workforce, like all I could think of is like, yeah, this continues on and on. But which isn't to say that, oh, you should get used to it. It's education should be a place where we are shielding kids from having to deal with that because that will never, it does continue on. Like, not only do you have to most of the time work a job that you don't want to work, you have to do things at that job where you're like, well, am I just showing my boss or management that I care about this, so I'm going to do this and get this kind of, and it's all this bullshit. And it is such a bummer to hear, that sort of, and it's not surprising, and we've talked about it, but the sort of hustle culture in high school and even, I assume, middle school as you kind of try to set yourself up. I don't know.
I remember being stressed out when I was doing my 7th grade math and 6th grade. I'm like, this is going to look so much better on my and it's like, there's not that much you can do in middle school, but I still even then kind of remember feeling the pressure of like, oh, well, I only have college in 7 years, so better get started on that one. Not 7. That's completely not right. No, that is right.
That is right.
Oh, okay.
See, look at you and your math.
Yeah, look at me. And again, it isn't to say that like being busy or that being involved is a bad thing.
No.
Like, I don't think that's wrong at all. And I don't think it's also wrong to have high aspirations for yourself. But I also think that like, if it's not driven by passion, one, like it's just making your life so miserable in a time where you should not really have to worry about that as much. And two, it also just shows. Like, I feel like so much of college applications is like, tell me about you. Tell me about why what you did matters. Tell me about why you chose to do what you did. And it's like, I think some of that inauthenticity kind of comes up in the college applications process when you're like sitting down for an interview, which like I sat down for interviews for my colleges. When you're writing supplementals, like that's one of the things they ask you about. My Georgetown supplemental, it was asking me, like, what was the impact, or why did you choose to do, or why was it personally meaningful to you, any of the extracurriculars that you did? So it's like, not only is it lose-lose, where now you're kind of just involved in all of this stuff that you don't actually really care about, it's also apparent now to everyone else that, like, you lack direction, or drive, or passion, or any of these things. And so it just kind of shakes out to be a loss for everyone.
Do you feel fulfilled?
I'd say I feel fulfilled. I think all the things that I was involved in, I cared a lot about. I think that all of the hobbies that I picked up, all of the things that I do, I think they all mean a lot to me. I think I enjoy them. Do I think I'm good at them? Well, that's up for debate, but I definitely know that I have fun doing them. I generally look back at my high school experience, and aside from a few bumps in the road where I'm like, well, I really could have done a little better there, which are not a lot, I think, like, yeah, I think that this was a really good balance of personal development and learning how to be the person that I am now and probably will not be in another year. I think that none of that was time wasted. I think it was a really good balance of just, like, personal growth and personal investment. And also, you know, I was involved. I did things. I was contributing to the community. It was all of this stuff. And I'm like, when I look back at the end of the day, I think that I had a pretty solid balance, as much as there can be one. I also just like to have things going on, like, in some ways. I think I thrive off of structure as much as I don't like it. I do think I need some sort of, like, structure or task. As soon as, like, I am deprived of that, I kind of fall off a little bit. So I think being involved in those things also was just good for me in that, like, I was given a direction.
If you had to give a piece of advice to someone starting high school right now, just big piece, what would you say?
I would just say what I've been saying. Lead with passion, follow what you're interested in, and once you've identified that, get involved. Like, I don't think it has to be terrible or soul-sucking or tedious if you find ways to care about it.
How could we change the system to encourage more people to do that? Like, you know what I mean? To where people are using high school as a time to uncover their passions, discover their talents, and maybe not so much, as you started off by saying, focused on numbers and testing and data and, grades and, rank and is it weighted? Is it not weighted?
No,
like, should I take driver's ed? Should I not take driver's ed?
We have to produce workers to increase GDP so businesses have compliant employees. That's what
Guys,
school is for.
Are you even thinking about the shareholders?
Exactly.
I don't feel like you have the shareholders.
But truly, I mean, because I know I've heard it from other students that they feel so much pressure. And is there anything that we could do
I think
to change that?
I think it's kind of a tricky balancing act because if you do, there are always going to be kids who are ambitious and who want to be high achievers. And I do think that college is important when it comes to what you want your future, what your aspirations are. And I think I don't want to erase, like a lot of my friends are very, very hard workers who, you know, I think they do lead with passion.
We've had a
But
couple of them on the podcast.
Yeah, you know them. I don't want to erase that. And I don't want it to sound like that's what I'm doing. But I also think that a lot of it starts in just like the guidance counselor's office. For me personally, I have had a mixed bag experiences with a lot of my counselors. I generally have not felt like it was a safe space exactly. But I feel like there is a lot of pressure into funneling a lot of kids into the like default gauntlet of classes that you have to run that everyone just like does. And a lot of those classes are just 6-point weighted. They're AP classes. They're either like you get funneled into just like so many classes and they're all very like high level classes, and then when you go in and sign up next year it's like, well, now we're going to try to push you into ACE and we're going to try to push you into getting this diploma or this thing or the other thing, which again, there will always be high achievers, there will always be kids with big ambitions, and I understand that, I respect that, but it's also like I feel like just the fact that everyone's like, even just the counselors are like, let's get this up there, like it's not even treated as a conversation. It's more just the default as of what kids are supposed to do. And I think it's really okay if you are not personally interested in running the gauntlet. If you're like, honestly, I don't think I have the bandwidth to deal with these AP classes and this ACE program and all of this stuff that is not even fulfilling or meaningful to you. It's like, at that point, it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to have an alternative pathway that you're still going to have all the credits anyway. And as long as at the end of the day, you are able to walk that stage and feel good about yourself and feel good about what you did, instead of feeling like, oh my God, I was pushed into these classes and I was suffocating the whole time and it was an awful and anxious experience for me and I feel like none of it was to any point. I feel like it's always better to walk across the stage and maybe the GPA hasn't been boosted over a 5.0. That's fine. Like, you can just do that. But I feel like so much of the default gauntlet that you're supposed to run as a student is ACE classes, AP classes, this, that, the other thing. And it's like harder to opt down than it is to opt up. And I feel like that's a big problem, is that it's really hard to say I would actually like to take the honors version of that, because the default is that everyone's going to try to push you into AP, even if like your test scores or this and that and the other thing show that you don't have the like that is maybe not the level you should be placed at the first time.
Well, it always, or that story makes me think of this story that I often talk about a lot, because my senior year high school experience was quite fraught, and I was in an AP calculus class, and I both literally and figuratively failed. But I knew at the beginning of the class, like I was not in a good mental place, and I went to my guidance counselor and I said, please, can you just like let me drop this class? And it was a little bit past the drop ad time, and they're like, no, you have to stay with it. And it was just like,
I have a friend who was in a similar boat who enrolled in AP Calculus, realized that she was not going to be able to succeed in that class, tried to drop it, teacher wouldn't sign the form.
It was terrible. And I had like just happened to have some credits that I'd gotten in middle school, and so I could fail it and still graduate high school, which is what I did. But it was terrible. It was like they like couldn't see poor Eddie, who was struggling, and like let him like go the path that he needed to go. And it was like, no, you're
going to be a high achiever whether you want to or not.
Exactly. Well, and part of this, and splintering off that, part of what makes me think of, and I'm not here to blame the only school board member on those podcasts. But it does make me think, and I know you are not responsible for this, which is why I would never blame you, but part of OCPS and part of the state of Florida and every other state is like, look at all the AP students we have taking our classes and all these other advanced classes, and look how well these students perform, which is important. We want students to perform well, but it also, the unintended consequences of everyone in that pipeline is geared towards getting students to take higher level classes. And so that pressure can come from above as well. Do you think I'm...
Oh, no. I mean, I think one of the things that I find concerning, first of all, I do think that we should encourage students to take, hard classes and difficult classes that they're capable of taking. The option should absolutely be there. So I definitely support that. I actually wish we had more IB options for students actually within our district. But what's equally concerning to me is now at some schools, they don't have standard level courses.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you want to take, let's say you want to take physics, well, your only option might be to take AP physics because a lower level of physics may not be offered at your particular high school. So
Another class I failed.
So I never honestly really understood physics, but I think it's just important that we have different levels for people because again, not everybody has the same goal. Not everybody's goal is to go to a top 25 college. Like some people want to graduate. Some people, have plans to go to like a community college. Some people have plans to go directly into the workforce, and all of those things are okay. And that's why I just think it's important to have, the progression of science should be there, but we should have all of the levels so that you can choose what level best suits you.
And I'm saying this as someone who did have big goals of wanting to get into a top 20 college, all of this stuff, and who. I mean, I would say to some extent I succeeded on that. But it also just, and I don't necessarily think that I think that I could handle a lot of the AP classes. I think I could handle a lot of it. But I also think just the mere fact that everyone is being forced into this and everyone is being shoved into this does help perpetuate the culture of everyone just feeling like, oh my God, this is a numbers game, and the math isn't adding up. And so I don't even necessarily think that specifically that was the problem for me personally, but I do think that the culture it created did impact me. And I think that was one of the probably worst parts of going through, late sophomore through early senior year.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of pressure. I know students are just feeling so much of that pressure, and it is a numbers game because in essence, you're competing with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the class below us is going through a heated exchange among the top 10 of who's going to be valedictorian next year and who's getting these credits or doing this thing. And I'm like, oh, have fun.
Would you call it a heated rivalry?
Yeah, I would call it a heated rivalry. Hashtag internet pop culture reference.
Banned book for sure.
Banned book.
Yeah, banned book for sure.
All right, can I'm related, but I want to transition. Get maybe slightly more personal, if that's okay. I mean, this has been personal. You're talking about yourself, but
Hey, me.
All right, what's it like having your mom as a school board member?
I say it's pretty rad. In short, I would say it is rad. In the long term, I feel like this actually did come at a pretty good time for me. My sophomore year. When were you elected? Is it the summer between sophomore and junior year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right,
so I feel like that
junior
was right at a time where I was pretty able to handle myself. I would say you definitely got busier. I think that's definitely true, but I also think you were just so busy beforehand with all your advocacy and all of this stuff that I feel like it wasn't actually a huge difference. It's just you were getting paid for it now, which was pretty sick. Gotta bring home those big bucks from OCPS. Yeah. I thought it was good. I honestly, I feel like you work from home so often. I feel like really the only days where I'm I don't know where she is or I haven't seen her is probably just Tuesdays because the meetings run so late.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I still feel like you're pretty present in my life. I don't feel like there's been a huge it doesn't feel like those cartoons from the this is gonna make you guys sound so old.
Can't wait.
From the late 1900s, it'll be mom goes off to work and she's wearing her pants and she forgets all about her young children that are sitting home alone and they all cry together and they have to huddle together and they have to eat like stale bread for dinner. Like, I don't feel like I ever felt that way even a little bit. Like, I don't even feel like I felt the feeling they were trying to like satirize.
So no stale bread for dinner in the Vanos house?
No, if I eat stale bread for dinner, it's because I want to.
Okay, good to know.
Which I sometimes do. Because I want to. That's on women having choices. Yeah, I would honestly just say I'm really proud of you. I mean, obviously I'm involved with like my own advocacy and stuff, but it really does make me feel like, oh, we, the Vanos family, are making a difference, even though that's mostly due to you and your drive and your ability to just like make your skills useful in a place, like use your skills in a place where they would be most useful. I just feel like it's been a pretty positive experience for me, especially in learning how to navigate local politics and the local political circuit. That's what I have to say.
Does it make you you're obviously involved in advocacy and we can talk about that momentarily. Does it make you want to run for office someday?
I don't think it's made me not want to run for office. I don't really think it's had any specific impact on my feelings of wanting to run for office. Mostly I think you just showed me that it's a job. Like every other job is a job. It's you have to go in and you have to have meetings and you have to talk to people who do not want to listen to you and all of this other stuff. And you have to have coworkers and sometimes you have a Christmas party and sometimes I go to the Christmas party and it's pretty cool. It was pretty cool. I've considered running for office though. I've thought about it. I don't know if it's specifically in my future. I don't know if I would be a great politician. I think I would be a great guy in a chair for someone somewhere. Although I do like to make speeches and I do like attention, so we'll see.
Well, you'd be a fabulous elected official, so...
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anytime. Okay, well, now that we're kind of dipping into politics, I do want to talk, like, about what, we were articulating, some issues around ICE, but what else, when you think of the way we are ruining this country, we meaning the folks who have power and are old enough to vote, which is going to be you soon.
Yeah, it's going to be me in some days.
How are we, you could answer this many, many ways, but when you think about how we're ruining this country and what you're actually most concerned about, what comes to your mind?
I just think we've seen a shift into breaking...
Not the fourth wall.
And not the fourth wall. That's what I'm doing. And I only think that makes this podcast better. I just think we've seen a shift into breaking years and years of legal and political precedent that we had all rightly, because it is written into our Constitution and our laws and the fabric of this country, that we had rightly assumed were going to keep us safe and assure us our rights that we have been taught since we were very young, that we are assured as young Americans just by nature of what this country means. Like, I feel like when you are young and when you are going through just like elementary school, even middle school, all of this stuff, you are like taught so much about how unique America is as a country and that we have all of these precedents and all of these things that are set in all of these ways and that are so special because we can all exist and the government can't tell us what to do and X, Y, and Z and the other thing, and we are protected if the government ever becomes tyrannical. And I think we have witnessed the government getting progressively more and more corrupt and tyrannical, and all of these fail-safes and these protocols and these checks and balances and all of these things that we were told are going to protect you and keep you safe if the government ever decides that it is no longer a friend to its people. We were told all of these things were supposed to keep us safe. And I feel like I have watched these fail-safes and these guardrails disappear in real time. And I'm like, okay, what is it that is actually stopping this from getting worse? Where is it where we draw the line and we say, this has not operated as intended, and this is now failed? And then what do we do when we get to that point? So I feel like it's just crazy to have been told your entire life that we're so special because we, America, this country is so special because we have all of these guardrails in place to ensure our freedom, and then to grow up and in real time watch and wake up and see how little they actually seem to mean in practice. Or at least seem to mean. Again, we know about flooding the zone. We know about wanting to make things seem hopeless. We know about, for lack of a better term, psychological warfare, propaganda, how we influence the masses into feeling hopeless and learned helplessness and lack of action. But again, there have been some very real cracks that have been made in the supposed guardrails in this country. And I think that has been probably one of the most disheartening things to see growing up in this age.
That's so fascinating. And I never thought about it from the perspective of a student who kind of is going through middle school civics and all of these classes where you're, learning in real time about, how our government is set up and how it's supposed to work, but then also watching in real time those things not work. I've never thought about it from that perspective.
I mean, I feel like when we think about our country and we think about all of these things, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, because right now I am in European history. I'm taking an AC European history class. I am no longer enrolled into high school because that is something that interests me. And what we study in that class is revolutions. We study by quarters. So first quarter, we learn about the French Revolution. Second quarter, we learn about the Industrial Revolution and, the political change that evoked in Britain. Then we learn about German liberalism and nationalism. And then the successive 1848, 1849 revolutions and that fallout. And then we learn about the Russian Revolution. And so when I'm thinking about all of these revolutions, and when I'm thinking about how the American Revolution is so different, and I think about all of these things that America is supposed to symbolize and supposed to stand for, when you actually look further back into the history of those things, you realize that there is corruption in that too. It's like we're told like America is so special and unique in its revolutions because of this, like there was no set social structure the way that there had been in the old world. Like in the old world, the formations of like European countries were formed throughout feudalism, right? So it's basically formed in very small, tiny units, which is why the countries in Europe are so small now. It's very small, tiny units, and then you build upwards and upwards and upwards into a king. So it's all very small, it's all very fragmented, and the social hierarchy of it is all very set in stone. And the reason that America is so different and that revolution is looked at so like favorably and as being something that was so transformative is because that was not the case in America. There was a lot more fluidity of class. There was a lot more movability in social hierarchy because there was no set underclass. And the reason that there was no set underclass was because of the slave trade. It was because of the slave trade. It was because we had removed the people that were already living there to have this blank foundation. We had removed the need to have this like lower underclass of menial laborers because of slavery. It's like all of these good things that we're taught to look at favorably. It's like if you just look at it a little bit more and you think about it a little more critically, you're like, well, even the good things about America that we're supposed to look at as good at the foundation of this country also come from bad things. Mm-hmm. And so it's like you're supposed to look at it and you have to think critically about it. And you're like, I mean, it's not the most earth-shattering realization in the world to just like think about that and be like, okay, well, yeah, we know bad things happen to Native Americans. We know bad things happen to enslaved people. But it's also just like you sit there and you sit with it and you're like, I am taught to have so much national pride and I am taught that we are so like any other nation in the world. And yet when I look at why exactly that is, it's just more of the same shames that we've had to come to terms with as we grow as a country.
I think that's incredibly well observed. And I think there's a lot of folks, I think, on the right. I mean, we are seeing in real time changes to how history is being taught and to how the harms of slavery and how slavery might have helped some people. And I think there's...
Might have.
So I think there is, you mentioned the word shame, and I think that is both a fair word, but I also, and not that you were not making this point, like, I think folks don't need to feel shame about what we did in the past, even though it was shameful, but it is important to, I think, do exactly what you do, which is to think about it and to realize what this country was built on and why it has become the behemoth that it has. And what can we do both in our current time and in our future time to help alleviate those wrongs? And I think that's, as opposed to slavery is in the past, we don't see color anymore. We're gonna reinterpret the Voting Rights Act in a way that quote unquote does not see race, but just so happens to allow for the elimination of majority minority districts. So I'm very heartened to hear you articulate that. And we continue to this day in this country struggle with how to confront our past.
Yeah, one of the things I took from your comment was that you feel that the classes and the curriculum really sort of wants people to take exception, with America, that America is the best. Like, America is special. America has done all the right things. And it's just and America's a special place, and kind of really cultivate patriotism and nationalism that you feel has been expressed within your classes. And it's interesting because I think there's this perspective that, our classes are trying to push an ideology on students that's actually the opposite of that. Yeah. But you're a student who's actually in the classes right now.
America.
Right. A student who's actually in the class right now is actually saying just the opposite. That actually what the classes are doing is saying America's amazing, America's great, we're so great, let's kind of gloss over these things. But it takes someone making that critical, step in their mind to really go back and examine maybe some of the things that aren't expressly discussed or aren't expressly taught in some of those classes.
Yeah. I feel like even when we do learn in history class, of course we learn all of these bad things, but it's also kind of like, it was a necessary step to get where we are today. We wouldn't be here today if all of these things hadn't happened. It's like, I guess it is true. I guess things wouldn't be exactly the same as they are right now if those things hadn't happened, but would that be for better or for worse? It's like, I feel like there's just kind of a level of justification, but it's also just a level of removal. It's like we learn in AP US history, which is a course the governor's trying to replace right now because of course, but we learn about AP US history and we learn about the way that Black Americans and people of color were treated, I think, in the lightest kind of, I would say glossed over way, because the visceral horror of how things actually unfolded, I think, is just I don't think whoever was writing that curriculum wanted to include it in the classroom setting. But I also think the way it is taught is that it is just so far removed. But then you can go down to the Orange County Regional History Center, and you can see they have an exhibit about Jim Crow and what it was like to be a person of color in the South, and in Florida specifically, in Orange County specifically. And you can see all of the maps, you can see where people were redlined, you can see how segregation worked within our own city. We can see all of these things and all of this evidence that this was not far removed. How far back do your ancestors go in Florida? Think about that. It was not that long ago, and it was not that removed. This is our city. And some of these people are still alive today. And so we learn about it. We learn about all of these things. And, there is some kind of underlying, well, this was bad. It was bad. And it's acknowledged. But it's also just so... It's not treated as something that is still impacting the community, that is so deeply woven into the fibers of America and and therefore the fibers of Orlando, Florida. And so I would, if you can, advise that you go down to the Regional History Center and you look at that room, because it will have you standing there for a moment being like, oh my God, this is so visceral and present and embedded within the fabric of our society that I don't understand how I didn't see it before. And so I just think it's really interesting. I remember even my AP US history teacher, she was talking about it and she was like, yeah, I mean, all of this stuff was so bad that it happened then, but I'm just so glad it doesn't happen now. We fixed that, it's gone now. And I was like, well, that is a real opinionated statement to make in a class where you are supposed to be teaching us facts, but she says it like it's a fact, and so people treat it like it's a fact, and so then we just move on. And it's that is an incredibly naive thing to say, and it is incredibly unrealistic to assume that the past exists in a vacuum, or that history exists in a vacuum, or that we, the people of the present, exist in a vacuum, and that because now we have so much more access to information, that removes all of the implicit biases that exist as a product of our environment.
Shout out to the History Center, by the way.
Shout out to the History Center. Amen.
Yeah, there's
Amen.
Actually, and I think I'm remembering this correctly. I think you can see a picture of the fishbowl. Do you remember that, when the schools were being desegregated and then they had to choose which teachers were going to which school, and they literally have a picture of the fishbowl with the names in them.
How come you never take me?
Hey, we can go anytime, Eddie.
Grown man, Eddie. Take responsibility for your own actions instead of blaming it on women.
There you go.
I know the playbook. You know the playbook.
I did want to go back to one other thing when you were talking about your ACE European history class, which I love that you took as a senior for fun.
Yep.
You mentioned
Tons
the
of fun at
Industrial
parties.
Revolution. So
Yeah.
in light of the UCF commencement speech last week,
Yikes.
I wanted to ask.
I was going to ask about this too. We are so in sync. Even though you don't take me to the Cultural History Center, we're still just locked in. Please continue.
Is AI the current industrial revolution?
Like, I think the Industrial Revolution, when we talk about it, it's like what it did was basically make it so that way the work of one person could be done by like 20 people. And I think I can understand in some ways how we do that with AI, because AI, we use it for processing, we use it for research, we use it for all this stuff. We use it as like a time saver. But I also think what the main cultural impact of AI has been, especially for my cohort, is that it's used as mostly just like a tool for entertainment. So like, you get like the stupid AI videos of like, here are 5 different butters I'm going to spread on this toast, and one of them is the Milky Way. It's like, it sounds completely incomprehensible. I'm trying to imagine telling that to anyone 50 years ago, and they'd say, what are you talking about? I don't know what I'm talking about, because it's all just slop. It's like, I feel like if we're using AI for like art, we're using it to make videos, we're using it to make content, we're using it for like fan fiction. It's like, I feel like even if that stuff is kind of slop a little bit, it's still like the most human thing you could do. It's like, why are we using AI to replace art? Like, I feel like if we're gonna use AI for anything, it should be for AI to make my grocery list and send my order out, so that way, like, AI should be making my grocery list and doing my chores and helping with my laundry and all of this stuff, so that way I can make art. It's like, if we're using it for creative expression, to replace artists, to replace writers, to replace people who make content, long form or short form, it's like, is this how we want to integrate AI into our modern society? Do we want AI to be doing the creative endeavors while we're left to like what? Input numbers into a spreadsheet, which AI could also probably do. It's like, where is our place in society if we're using AI to take the most human of tasks and human of experiences from humans? Like, that's just crazy to me.
Well, folks have made the point that, the AI obviously created by folks in Silicon Valley, and I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but a cohort of some people who are not creatively inclined and have a little bit of an axe to grind about it. And so
With creatives.
Yeah, with creatives.
Liberal arts.
And so created this system through massive intellectual property theft, created these systems where
Exactly.
where they could create products that seem like they were creative, which is what I'm going to call this slop, and to devalue the work of actual artists and the work of actual creativity. But it also takes the work of thinking and articulating and writing and I also,
there is no such thing as like an original thought from AI.
Right.
It's all just human thought ground up and fed to you and slop.
It's
exactly.
like bologna.
Bologna, that's sausage.
And I'm sure there are some AI enthusiasts listening, and thank you for listening. And I do want to acknowledge that there are parts of the workforce that do find AI useful, and I know that does exist. And I think that is different from like our consumer everyday use. And I'm sure we've talked about AI in this podcast of students who use it vociferously to do their work. So I just wanted to give shouts to that part, just so we know it exists.
I also just think that casual AI usage is, in my opinion, I think it's kind of ignoring a lot of the. It's again, nothing exists in a vacuum. And I think when a lot of people do use AI, they do think it exists in a vacuum. I'm not exactly going to talk about the environmental impact, because that has been debated. I'm not going to touch it for that reason. But I also think it's like when we look at the Utah hearing about the data centers, right? Mm-hmm. It's like those data centers are using so much energy. They are at a huge disadvantage to the communities that they're built in. And like, this is in Utah, by the way. It's just like definitely a predominantly white state where it's like, but it's like where people are going to go to town council meetings and they are going to stand up for themselves, and maybe they will get a little bit more press than the people that don't. And they did go to the town council meeting, they did stand up for themselves. And what did it get them? nothing, they're still going to build the data center. But it's like a lot of the places where these data centers are being built are in communities where they know they will not stand up for themselves, or where they know if they do, they will not be listened to. So it's predominantly marginalized communities, low-income people, people of color. All of these communities are the communities that they're disadvantaging to build these data centers. No one wants the data centers. It's like everyone's fine with like frivolously using AI and frivolously like propping up that enterprise, but like as soon as you see the actual cost to how that is created, it's suddenly like, oh, not in my backyard, which I don't think it should be in anyone's backyard. I'm not mad for people not wanting the data centers, but it's also like, think about that, like think about the cost of that, and assuming that the cost of that is negligible is, I think, a little bit irresponsible. Like I think you have to think about the larger web ripple effect impact of your actions and like what you're perpetuating by continuing to use AI.
It's one of the only types of NIMBYism I support is not in my backyard data centers.
Data centers, yeah.
Okay, so this is at least on this subject, this is the one follow-up. OCPS right now is considering its AI policy, has still not figured it out. Am I correct in that?
Still working through it.
Still working there. If you were had an opportunity to address the school board, and who is I would say, this is my editorializing, I would say is leaning towards more AI integration into K through 12 than less than AI integration, what would you say to the school board?
I think generally the feeling I have around my cohorts is that people are like, well, if my teacher's just going to use AI to grade my work, I'll just use AI to send in my work. Like, how is that fair? Or they'll be like, oh, okay, well, if it's just like two machines talking to each other, so who cares? Like, okay. I think that as much as we don't want to admit that, like, AI is not automatically better than humans just because it's, it lacks a lot. It lacks
humanity.
Like it lacks humanity. It lacks opinions. That doesn't necessarily make it better, because that human connection and that is part of what creates the urgency for some students to turn things in. It's like, well, if the teacher doesn't even respect me enough to grade my work, why do I respect this enough to do the work? I think it just creates a lack of sense of connection for, like, I will admit one thing about myself, which is that, am I the most consistent person about getting my work turned in? No, I am not. But I do generally turn my work in because I respect my teachers, and I respect their time. I respect they gave me the assignment for a reason, and I respect them as people and as professionals. So, you know what? I will make a much greater effort to get my work turned in. But I feel like when you kind of remove that and you're like, okay, so it just makes everything feel like busy work. And it's like, I've had teachers give assignments with the assumption that students were going to use AI. And then I'm like, so why am I even trying to do this? Which I did, for the record, I did still suffer through typing this assignment out. But they just gave it out with the assumption that people are going to use AI. And so it kind of gets to the point where it's like, well, why would I not just do that? But then again, I also think it's kind of difficult because AI checkers are not always accurate. And it's like, sometimes then you're going to get students who are accused of using AI when they didn't use AI. And it's like, okay, well, how are we even supposed to prove that? Is that like, so then you get into the kind of whole complicated thing of like, okay, well, how are we supposed to do that if someone does use AI? Like, how do you punish that? How do you even identify that? Like, how are we supposed to punish it if you can't identify it? Where are you getting the proof? How are you backing this up? And it's like, well, we can't put innocent kids in the crossfire who just happen to, I don't know, be huge M-dash shooters. That's me. So all of this to say, I think that really people are generally benefited by less AI. I think it creates less of a feeling of just like, every single high school kid is just like, why am I here and when can I leave? And this all feels so busy and pointless. And like, I'm tired of having to do busy work. I feel like everyone wants to feel like there's some sort of meaning or intention or just like purpose behind what they're doing in high school, because I feel like, especially at the age that I'm at, there's a lot of fatigue. And I feel like the increased automation of things just kind of, again, removes that sense of urgency and purpose, not only just to learn for yourself, well, not only just like turn stuff in, but also just like learn for yourself, and to like feel that like desire to, it removes the urgency to gain knowledge or the urgency to gain these skills, because you always know there's like a net bag out there to just catch you. AI is the net. Like, so I just kind of feel like it's overall not great for morale, but overall also just not great for kids in general.
But it's great for Silicon Valley billionaires.
Yeah, it's great for them.
Sure is.
They can have their fun.
And it's interesting to hear the perspective of AI actually makes school less relevant, when many of the people trying to encourage AI in schools say it's going to make school more relevant.
No.
But hear a student say, actually, it makes it less relevant.
Yeah, it just I think it goes back to what I was saying before about passion. It's like, even if you don't, it just removes any feeling of purpose. And I feel like I personally, again, I need a sense of purpose. And I feel like one of my favorite teachers that I've had this year, I never felt like I was getting an assignment from her that was busy work. It felt like every assignment that I was being given was intentional with regards to not only the curriculum, but to better our understanding of how to analyze literature and how to, develop that sense of critical thinking. And so I think when, me personally, when I see like a total lack of intention or purpose behind an assignment that I'm given, me personally, it's just hard for me to motivate myself to do it. And I'm still going to do it anyway because I respect my teachers, but it just sucks. And it just feels like just more mind-numbing slop that you have to get through before you can just get out of here and graduate. Praise the Lord.
Babe, you never think about our relationship as a series of mind-numbing slop, do you?
Never slop, for sure.
But occasionally.
Mind-numbing, yes. Slop, no.
Okay, I don't know how many more questions you have, Steph. I have one more question.
Okay, let's finish out.
Okay, and we want to have you back on the podcast in a year after your first year of college. But what are your predictions for Elizabeth Vanos for her first year of college?
I don't know. I think I'm going to have to get a lot better at managing myself. I think I've kind of been able to float by on a breezy disposition and natural aptitude for a lot of school related stuff. So I think college is going to be the time where I'm going to have to figure out how to manage and organize myself. I think it's got a little bit out of hand, my lack of ability to do that. So that's my number one prediction. My number two prediction is that hopefully I'm able to explore more things that I'm interested in. Like I said, I feel like I'm really driven by passion and a feeling of purpose. I don't like being forced into stuff that I feel like I'm supposed to do that doesn't really have a lot of meaning behind it. So I'm really hoping I'm not getting too burnt out by all of the gen ed I'm going to have to be doing. But hopefully it won't be that much because I got a lot of credits that'll transfer over. So
shout out to OCPS.
Shout out to OCPS. I mean, hey, they forced me into those AP classes, and I will say now I have to do less gen ed. So
I think you though would have taken many of them. Just saying for you personally.
Oh, but for me personally, I definitely would have.
Your comments are well taken, and I
just in terms of like my friends and the feeling of the culture it creates.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I don't get too burnt out by gen ed. I hope I get into the really interesting stuff. And I hope that I am able to just explore being bad at more stuff. I want to join a lot of clubs of stuff that I have not done before. I want to have a lot of new experiences. I want to take up a lot of new hobbies. I feel like that's everyone's kind of vibe when they're going off to college. They're like, I'm going to be a completely new person. I do not want to be a new person, but I do want to be Elizabeth Vanos just with a bunch of other extra skills that I am either pretty bad at or just like exceedingly mediocre. Because that's okay. You can just do stuff and not have to have it be good. So that's what I'm hoping. I hope I have a lot more opportunity to fail, but I also hope I have developed enough systems within my brain and in my life that I will be able to catch myself if I do.
I love it.
I love that. Those are all great goals. And I know you're going to thrive there. And my favorite thing that you said was exploring new things and being willing to fail at them and be willing to be mediocre at them. I think this is the time. Well, first of all, I think throughout our lives, we should always be trying new things.
And always be failing.
Always be failing because, that's how you learn more about yourself. So
people can create AI slop, you can create human slop.
It's true.
And you didn't chug a whole lake just to do that.
That's a great point. Steph, I think this is your calling to take some improv classes.
Yeah. Maybe some art.
Whoa, see how my mind just went blank there and I couldn't think of anything to say? I don't know. We'll see.
What?
We'll see.
What? Any final questions for your eldest daughter?
I'm just so proud. I'm just so proud of you. I am so proud of I've always been proud of the person that you are, but really the person that you've become over the last couple of years, and the community that you've built for yourself, and the chances and the challenges that you took and you overcame, and just so proud of everything that you're doing. And I think one day you should definitely run for office if you want to, but if you don't, that's okay too.
You have shaped me into the person that I am. I will say that.
Oh.
I think you have a lot to be proud of here.
Oh.
That's beautiful.
Well, I know I have a lot to be proud of in you, so.
Thank you.
Oh, we have to end on that note.
shout-
That's too beautiful.
Wait, I have to shout out to my other people in my community. Shout out Adolphsons and Grams if you're listening to this, and whoever else this sees this on social media. I love you all. Okay.
That was beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining. We're gonna have you back in about a year, and we want to do a check-in.
Radical.
Radical. You said cowabunga the other day.
Did I?
Yes.
I probably did.
You
Yeah.
definitely did.
Cowabunga.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Of course. Stay groovy. Cowabunga.